The Galactic Empire had ruled for millennia, its influence stretching across countless star systems, its fleets unmatched, its dominance unquestioned. It had crushed rebellions, assimilated species, and dismantled civilizations with cold efficiency. For centuries, they believed themselves to be the inevitable rulers of the galaxy. But then came humanity, a species from a death world, unpredictable, violent, and resilient beyond all known parameters. At first, the Empire ignored them, assuming they would eventually conform or collapse under their own chaotic impulses. They were wrong. Humanity expanded faster than any species on record. They adapted to hostile environments with reckless abandon. They formed alliances with former imperial subjects, offering them what the Empire never could, freedom and security. But what truly unsettled the Empire was not humanity's technology or their rapidly growing fleets. It was their capacity for strategic evolution. No other species could recalibrate entire war doctrines in days. No other species could lose a battle and, within weeks, return with countermeasures that rendered imperial victories obsolete. Human adaptability was terrifying, but more terrifying was the woman at the center of their meteoric rise. Her name echoed through imperial intelligence channels, each whisper more alarming than the last. She was not a soldier. She rarely commanded ships directly. Yet, she redefined warfare with the precision of a master. Entire campaigns unraveled under her predictions. Enemy admirals found themselves cornered before their fleets had even engaged. She saw through misinformation, pierced layers of deception, and manipulated the flow of battles as if she were playing a game no one else understood. Her record was flawless. Entire legions fell to her orchestrations. Imperial tacticians called her the Death Architect. To the humans, she was simply their strategist. The Empire convened in urgency. High-ranking war ministers, shadow council members, and the Emperor's personal enforcers debated the threat she posed. Some argued she was just one human, replaceable like the rest. Others insisted her mind could not be duplicated, that her unique instincts were an anomaly even among her species. The risk was unacceptable. The decision was made. She would die. Quietly. Surgically. No fleets. No open conflict. The Empire would send their most precise instrument of death, an assassin engineered beyond natural limits. The assassin was no ordinary killer. He was bred on a gravity world that crushed most life forms. His bones were laced with metallic compounds. His reflexes accelerated beyond measurable scales. His senses were layered with enhancements to perceive fluctuations in electromagnetic spectrum, pheromonal shifts, and microvibrations. He did not fail. He had dismantled political hierarchies, exterminated warlords, and destabilized entire planetary governments without being seen. His mission record was perfect. Failure was not considered. He studied the target. Every document, every movement, every minor anomaly in her patterns. He analyzed her psychological profiles, her childhood trauma, her academic records, her battle simulations. He dissected the architecture of her thought processes. He constructed predictive models, tested them against archived human responses, adjusted for emotional volatility. He viewed humans as dangerous animals, but animals nonetheless, predictable in their primal drives. Kill the strategist, shatter their cohesion. His infiltration began across the outer sectors. He moved through the underbellies of human trade hubs, bypassing their electronic security with contemptuous ease. Human space was chaotic, layers upon layers of decentralized systems, random checks, and seemingly illogical redundancies. Yet, these redundancies were deliberate. The humans had evolved their security to function in failure. The assassin's entry went unnoticed, just as planned, but his peripheral observations disturbed him. He observed human soldiers laughing minutes before battle, their conversations dripping with dark humor and fatalistic acceptance. He watched engineers working under pressure, improvising repairs with materials that should not have worked. He saw humans weaponizing environmental hazards, turning waste and debris into lethal obstacles. They thrived in disarray. They adapted at speeds as models struggled to process. They exhibited a kind of instinctive warfare, beyond doctrine. Still, he remained focused. He tracked the strategist's movements across key installations. Her routine appeared erratic but contained hidden structure. She frequently changed locations without notification, her personal security layers folding over each other unpredictably. The assassin's models recalibrated. Each attempt to isolate her was thwarted by her own counterproductive behavior. She was not evading him directly. She had designed her life to be a maze for any potential threat. He initiated contact through controlled interference, minor sabotage of her transport, a manufactured failure in local communications, standard procedures to induce panic and create an opening. But the humans responded with layered contingencies. They anticipated failure at every level. The chaos increased, but instead of fracturing, the humans coalesced into tighter units, each independently capable of completing the mission. The assassin's timeline shrank. He executed an aggressive incursion, breaching her secondary transport under heavy disguise. He infiltrated the convoy, bypassed biometric locks, disabled security layers. He was within striking distance. His moment approached. He struck with lethal precision, only to find that he had been led into a dead zone, a strategic trap designed specifically for an assassin operating under his parameters. The space collapsed around him. Security layers activated not to kill him, but to force his retreat. His exit was engineered. The humans did not attempt to capture him. They wanted him to survive. They wanted him to return. A message had been left where the strategist should have been. Send one of yours. We send one of ours. You have failed. The assassin retreated, navigating through escalating layers of containment designed to funnel him out. Every step revealed how thoroughly his mission had been anticipated. The humans had predicted his operational doctrine, had structured their defenses not to resist him directly, but to corral him like prey. His models broke down. His belief in his own superiority fractured. When he finally returned to the Empire's core worlds, his report was damning. He described a human force that operated beyond logic, that embraced disorder as a weapon, that built failure into their strength. He described a strategist who had turned his skills against him without ever meeting him. The Emperor dismissed the initial severity. Failure was unacceptable, but the assassin would have a chance to redeem himself. Another attempt would be made. But the assassin was not the only one who had carried a message. The human general, upon learning of the attempt, did not call for retribution in the form of fleets or planetary bombardments. He did not escalate with political ultimatums. His response was simple: send one of theirs back. Human intelligence selected their instrument of retaliation. Not an army, not a squad, a single human operator, a figure whose records were classified even to most human generals, a specialist who did not simply kill. He dismantled. The assassin's return to the imperial capital was not met with honor. His perfect record meant nothing now. He had failed a mission that the Empire had deemed surgically precise, a task so tailored that deviation had been considered impossible. His failure shook the imperial court, but the true weight of his return did not settle until the humans responded. The Empire's intelligence services monitored human transmissions, expecting diplomatic protest, perhaps a formal complaint. Instead, they intercepted one brief message from a human general: send one of theirs back. The Empire's War Council scrambled to decode the implications. No mass fleet movement, no retaliatory strike, no escalation through formal channels. The humans had chosen precision. They had chosen to respond in kind. The Empire believed this was a bluff, that the humans lacked the capability to project force through individual assets with the same lethality. They had seen human soldiers, even their elite forces, but what they had not seen were operators. The human military's internal files on operators were encrypted beyond external decryption capabilities. The Empire only recovered fragments, pieces of incomplete dossiers, names erased, records sealed. Whispers emerge of humans trained for operational singularity. Individuals not just trained to kill, but to destabilize entire regimes. Men and women conditioned to think beyond survival, beyond tactics, toward systemic collapse. Humans who did not fight battles. They ended them. The Empire fortified key planets, increased security at leadership hubs, deployed tracking units across high-priority sectors. They prepared to absorb a human incursion, by conventional metrics. They layered their defenses in concentric circles, focused their detection systems on high-profile routes. But the human general had no intention of using predictable entry points. The operator deployed was not chosen for brutality. He was chosen for his precision, his adaptability, and his capacity to unmake complex systems. His designation was not shared. His mission parameters were classified beyond his own clearance. His objective was to send the Empire a lesson they would not forget. His insertion into Imperial space went unnoticed. By the time the Empire realized someone had entered, key communication nodes had already failed. The operator began by dismantling critical intelligence relays. He severed connections not through raw destruction, but through cascading failures induced by subtle, calculated disruptions. Control centers misrouted their own traffic. Security teams were sent to wrong locations. Coordinators failed to receive critical updates. The operator's footprint remained invisible, not because of advanced technology, but because he embedded his disruptions within the Empire's own procedural blind spots. Imperial commanders underestimated the scale of the threat. They believed their fleets could respond with overwhelming force if a target was located. They failed to understand that the operator was not targeting their fleets. He was dismantling their ability to think, to communicate, to coordinate. He moved through their infrastructure like a viral algorithm, collapsing decision-making processes from inside. Key planetary governors found themselves isolated. Supplies were redirected without explanation. Mercenary guilds employed by the Empire suddenly switched sides, incentivized by offers they could not refuse. Political rivals within the Empire were exposed at the most inconvenient moments, their crimes and betrayals presented to the wrong people at precisely the right time. The Empire began to devour itself, believing in internal conspiracies that the operator had fabricated. The original assassin, now disgraced, was assigned to track the operator. His understanding of human irregularity made him the Empire's best hope. But each lead dissolved. Each pattern unraveled as soon as it was approached. The operator anticipated his moves, not through surveillance, but through prediction. The assassin realized he was not hunting the human. The human was hunting him. The operator did not rush. He dismantled the assassin's support networks piece by piece. Contacts vanished. Safe houses were compromised. Resources evaporated. The assassin began to see the shape of the strategy, a slow, methodical constriction designed to leave him no sanctuary. The assassin's own methods were used against him. His reliance on patterns, on structured retreats, was precisely what made him vulnerable. The Empire's response accelerated. They deployed kill teams across multiple sectors. They activated dormant assets, summoned private militaries, raised planetary shields around key command centers. The operator ignored these. His objective was not destruction. His mission was precision. He eliminated the assassin's last surviving handler, a figure critical to the Empire's covert operations. He disabled the handler's security layers without direct confrontation. The handler simply ceased to exist within the system. His biometric data erased, his identification codes voided, his protections collapsed in real time. His death was not physical, it was structural. He was rendered invisible, a non-entity, and subsequently swept away by his own panicked guards who could no longer verify his existence. The assassin's isolation became total. His requests for reinforcements were denied due to forged authorization blocks. His emergency evacuation routes were severed by fabricated security breaches. He was led toward a single extraction point, a location carefully selected by the operator. The assassin understood too late that his every movement had been manipulated, his every decision anticipated. When the assassin arrived at the final site, he found himself surrounded not by soldiers, but by silence. The operator awaited him, not as a direct combatant, but as a deliverer of the Empire's final humiliation. The assassin's weapons were disabled remotely, his escape route sealed. The operator delivered the message verbally, a rare deviation from protocol, ensuring it would resonate with the one who had first attempted to take a human life. Return to your emperor. Tell him this is our restraint. The assassin was not killed. The operator bound him with non-lethal restraints, implanted a tracking node into his biostructure, and triggered a failsafe that would expose the Empire's most secret transport channels if the assassin was harmed or altered in any way. The assassin's transport vessel, pre-rigged by the operator, activated its return protocols and launched him back to the Imperial capital without the possibility of deviation. The assassin's arrival was witnessed by the highest echelons of Imperial command. His survival was not celebrated. It was dissected as the ultimate failure. The humans had not just repelled an assassination attempt. They had returned the assassin with precision that signaled complete dominance over his mission, his extraction, and his very identity as a weapon. The Emperor's rage was silent, not explosive. He understood the layered threat now. The humans had weaponized more than soldiers. They had weaponized understanding. They had sent not just a killer, but an operator systems, a dismantler of hierarchies. The Empire's greatest weapon had been rendered irrelevant. Their structures had been shown to be fragile. Their power had been revealed as performative. The story of the returned assassin spread faster than Imperial censors could suppress it. No matter how many channels the Empire shut down, the narrative persisted, moving through pirate guilds, smuggler routes, fringe mercenary circles, and unaligned planetary governments. The message required no embellishment. The Empire sent one of theirs. The humans sent one back. The simplicity of the statement carried the weight of absolute clarity. Every faction that heard it understood what it meant. The humans were not to be measured by known scales. They did not escalate like other species. They escalated with precision. The Galactic Empire attempted to reassert control over the Storie, but their efforts only fueled its momentum. Every attempt to deny the event was met with additional confirmations from independent sources. Even minor border factions, who previously feared the Empire's retaliation, began to question the strength behind a mask of imperial power. The human response had not been a war fleet. It had not been planetary strikes. It had been one man, and that man had dismantled more than infrastructure. He had dismantled the myth of imperial invulnerability. The balance of power across the galaxy began to shift. Alliances that had once gravitated toward the Empire for protection now drifted toward neutrality. Unaffiliated species reevaluated their positions. Some quietly approached human diplomats, seeking trade, security pacts, and non-aggression treaties. Others chose isolation, fearing that even association with the Empire might mark them as potential targets should the humans decide to make another example. Within the Empire, fractures deepened. Regional governors began fortifying their own territories, not out of loyalty, but out of fear that they could be next. Imperial military assets were spread thinner as security requirements multiplied across key systems. Resources previously allocated for expansion were redirected toward internal stability. The humans had not fired on the Empire's homeworld, but they had forced the Empire to defend itself from shadows it could no longer track. The story of the returned assassin began to mutate as it passed through different cultures. Some claimed the human operator was a ghost, an entity beyond physical limits. Others believed he was a manifestation of the death world itself, summoned when humans were wronged. Rational analysts dismissed the embellishments, but could not dismiss the consequences. The Empire had been shown its vulnerability, and the lesson had spread beyond their reach. Humanity's leadership understood the magnitude of their success. They did not push further. They did not capitalize on the Empire's moment of weakness with open aggression. Instead, they expanded quietly, reinforcing trade routes, fortifying new colonies, and continuing their diplomatic offensives. They demonstrated control. They demonstrated that their response to provocation was precise, not reckless. This restraint made them more dangerous. The Empire attempted to regain initiative. They began developing assassination protocols tailored specifically for humans, constructing bioengineered assets with adaptable neural profiles designed to process chaotic variables. These programs failed. No matter how they adjusted their models, they could not replicate the human's capacity to weaponize unpredictability. Their simulations collapsed when faced with the kind of lateral thinking that the humans displayed naturally. The Empire's leadership began to understand that they were attempting to fight not just a species, but a mindset that thrived on failure, adapted through pain, and weaponized every miscalculation. Attempts to replicate human operators using enhanced alien assets yielded catastrophic results. The assets either failed psychological conditioning or turned against their handlers, unable to process the contradictions required to function as human counterparts. The Empire's most advanced training regimens broke when faced with the necessity to abandon rigid doctrine in favor of improvisational dominance. Human operators did not follow predictable escalation patterns. They leveraged the very systems designed to contain them. The Empires best failed to comprehend this without experiencing operational collapse. The assassin, now a living symbol of imperial failure, became both a pariah and a legend within the Empire's intelligence community. His name, once synonymous with perfection, now served as a reminder that even the most precise weapon could be rendered ineffective against humans. His personal accounts were studied obsessively, not to refute them, but to find some edge, some overlooked detail that might offer a path forward. None was found. His descriptions of human adaptability, of their capacity to think beyond established frameworks, became a foundation for new imperial counterhuman protocols. But the protocols themselves collapsed under the weight of their own complexity. The assassin's presence at the imperial court was tolerated but never welcomed. He was an embarrassment the Empire could not erase. He had survived where survival was not permitted, returned as a carrier of the humans' message. His understanding of what the humans represented grew over time, evolving beyond professional detachment into something closer to fear. He came to understand that the humans had allowed him to live not as a gesture of mercy, but as a deliberate component of their larger strategy. His survival was a weapon against the Empire. The humans, without announcing their movements, solidified influence across systems previously dominated by the Empire. Independent worlds began aligning with human protocols, adopting defensive structures based on human tactical doctrines. These shifts occurred without military campaigns, without territorial disputes. The memory of the returned assassin and the operator who sent him back sufficed to reshape the galactic map. The Empire's high command, driven by desperation, initiated covert operations to probe the edges of human-controlled space. These incursions were met not with overwhelming force, but with quiet, surgical resistance. Supply convoys disappeared without trace. Covert listening posts were neutralized without alarms. Commanders assigned to these missions vanished or returned stripped of their authority, their command structures dismantled during their absence. Across mercenary guilds and pirate enclaves, a new rule emerged. Humans were not to be targeted. The cost was no longer calculable. Contracts involving human assets were declined or heavily modified to include exit clauses in the event of human involvement. Even those who thrived on high-risk engagements refused operations that crossed human interests. The assassin story continued to grow, not because the humans expanded it, but because the galaxy could not stop repeating it. The simplicity of the message was impossible to contain. The humans did not need propaganda. Their actions and the precision of their response were more effective than fleets of battleships. The idea that a single human operator could destabilize entire imperial frameworks with surgical application of force altered the calculation for every species with galactic ambitions. The Galactic Empire's internal collapse was not immediate, but the fracture line spread relentlessly. The assassination attempt, the returned assassin, and the silent, surgical human response had planted a rot that the Empire could not excise. Strategic meetings grew tense. Trust dissolved between departments. Factions within the Empire's highest circles now operated as if their peers were potential liabilities, not allies. The assassin's survival was no longer a singular event. It had become a trigger, a perpetual reminder that the Empire's reach had limits and that its enemies could strike with perfect precision. Humanity's expansion continued without resistance. Where other empires would celebrate victories with grand announcements, the humans remained silent, their advances clinical and focused. Colonies appeared on the edge of contested systems without declaration. Trade routes stabilized under human security without fanfare. Their absence from diplomatic theater spoke volumes. The Empire's analysts tracked these quiet moves, watching as humanity constructed a new kind of influence that did not rely on shows of force but on the pervasive certainty that retaliation would be exact and disproportionate. Empire-controlled species, once resigned to submission, began defecting, aligning with human principles not out of ideological loyalty, but from a pragmatic understanding that human protection came with fewer demands and a level of security the Empire no longer guaranteed. Former Imperial mercenary factions shifted their contracts, choosing human-backed employers, fully aware that the humans would not tolerate betrayals or second chances. The human policy was simple. Trust was extended once, violated, and the response would be personal, inevitable, and final. The assassin remained under observation, not as a trusted agent, but as a living failure. He had become an involuntary figurehead for a doctrine that no longer held relevance. Imperial training centers dissected his failure endlessly, but no simulation, no counter-strategy, no replicated human scenarios offered a path to success. The assassin himself no longer believed in the Empire's methods. He understood that the humans had not merely outmaneuvered him. They had written an entirely different game, one where his rules did not apply. The Empire's leadership cycled through increasingly unstable policies. Fleets were redirected to non-essential systems to project strength. Resources were exhausted in false pursuits, chasing ghosts that the humans had deliberately left in their wake. Every missing supply ship, every communication disruption, every unexplained failure was now assumed to be a prelude to human intervention. The Empire's command structure collapsed under the weight of its own paranoia. Human operators continued their silent campaigns. They did not seek total war. They sought alignment. Independent systems that refused human diplomacy found themselves isolated as their security agreements dissolved. Pirates ceased targeting human convoys. Black market arms dealers quietly removed human assets from their lists. Smuggler networks that once profited from imperial corruption now funneled intelligence directly to human command structures in exchange for long-term survival. The Empire attempted to rally its allies for a coordinated show of strength, but the political landscape had already shifted. The story of the assassin's return had grown into a galactic precedent. No species wanted to be the next to receive a human response. No empire wished to bear the cost of miscalculating the threshold of human retaliation. Even species that remained neutral adjusted their policies to ensure no individual or group within their borders would provoke a response on their behalf. The assassin, stripped of purpose, drifted through imperial space as a man without direction. His legacy haunted him. He had become the carrier of his enemy's message. His failure was not a tactical misstep. It was a deliberate component of a human strategy. They had chosen him to return. They had made him the living weapon against his own empire's arrogance. He could not undo what had been done. His survival was a permanent scar on the empire's claim of dominance. The empire, unable to reverse its decline, focused on containment. They no longer sought expansion. Their intelligence services shifted from proactive operations to desperate defensive monitoring. They assumed every irregularity, every political failure, every security collapse was influenced by human operators. The humans rarely needed to intervene again. The Empire's own fear ensured their paralysis. Humanity's influence solidified across border systems without war. Their colonies thrived under their security networks. Their alliances expanded through pragmatic trade and mutual defense. Other species found stability in proximity to humans, accepting human terms not because they were forced, but because they had seen what happened to those who challenged them. The humans offered peace, but made it clear that their patience was not infinite. The galactic councils, once dominated by imperial interests, restructured themselves to accommodate the growing human bloc. Human diplomats, carefully selected and strategically placed, guided policy shifts without coercion. The humans did not seek to control through visible power. They shaped outcomes through quiet inevitability. No one openly opposed them. No one dared. The assassin eventually chose exile, leaving imperial space under false credentials, no longer valuable to the empire that once built him. His name carried weight, but his presence was a reminder of defeat the empire preferred to forget. He crossed into fringe territories, blending into populations who revered the story of his return as a turning point in galactic history. He did not correct their assumptions. He lived with the knowledge that his greatest legacy was not the missions he completed, but the one he failed. The mission the humans had allowed him to fail. The Empire's remnants adapted to survival, But their era of unquestioned dominance had ended. Their fleets remained, their territory persisted, but their expansion ceased. They governed through fear of collapse rather than through ambition. They became reactive, always anticipating the next human move that rarely came. The humans had proven they did not need to maintain pressure. They only needed to remind the galaxy that a single calibrated response could dismantle what entire wars could not. The assassin story became part of operational doctrine across species. It was studied not as a cautionary tale about failure, but as a lesson in the consequences of misreading human thresholds. His life became a data point in every tactical simulation, a reference case in every interstellar negotiation involving humans. The legend outgrew him, but he accepted that reality. The humans had made him a messenger, and he had delivered it perfectly. The humans never pursued him again. They did not need to. His survival was a closed chapter, an intentional loose end. The humans had already moved beyond him, beyond the initial exchange, beyond the limited scale of his mission. They had embedded themselves in the galactic order, not through force, but through the weight of demonstrated consequences. They had calibrated the boundaries of acceptable action without enforcing them openly.